much.
Spring cleaning and all that
Pretty
good
much,
stuff.
Yeah.
I mean, when people came in and
I'm
homesteaded,
easier to contact on
they considered it their land then. and-
on here.
Okay.
Yeah, it's very complex, but
I do have a cell phone,
I mean, it was,
but it's.
people, the Indians kind of had to sign it away. Things were being done to kill them, you know.
Yeah.
One of the local chiefs was given a package of smallpox scabs that were actually wrapped up in multiple layers, like one of those sort of prank gifts that, you know, has one layer wrapping after another. And of course it kept the messenger person safe, you know, but as they kept unwrapping this, when they got to the inside of it, it was for smallpox scabs. And then blankets with smallpox, that were infected with smallpox, were distributed all along this northwest coast. And so the Indians really kind of had no choice but to either relocate or sign away and move into small areas. The bulk of the county was supposed to be set aside as reservation. And then by the 20th century, the tribe was down to less than 20 acres. It was very tiny
The
unclaimed.
homesteaders came and just, thank you.
People got tricked into, what happened was they set aside reservations, and then they decided that they were going to do something called allotment. That rather than give all that land to the Indians, they would give the Indians the right to apply for lots, and that were X number of acres. They decided that the full size of what was supposed to have been in reserve was too much for the Indians. They didn't need all that. So the best sites were pulled out and given to homesteaders. And then what was left was available for allotments, but the Indians very frequently were not told how to get the allotments, didn't read or write in English, and so didn't know how to apply for it. And in many cases, the allotment applications are still pending 50 years later, right? You know, so that basically nobody in the government ever processed the paperwork. And then once people got the allotments, very often the Native people did not realize that they were supposed to pay taxes on that property, so they would lose it to back taxes. And then there were swindlers who came into the area and again would take advantage of the fact that these people were fluent in a different language, read and wrote in a different language, and so would put forth contracts, and the interpreter would tell the native person that you're selling some trees off of the land. And they wouldn't realize that they were actually transferring the deed to the land. So there was a lot of swindling going on until the remnant population was down to just a handful of acres, really, and a couple handfuls of acres. And then the native people began buying back property as they could. But there's still a very strong sense of apartheid in the region. So the schools are pretty much segregated. At Leland School, the high school locker assignments are still segregated by race.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh!
Right. More than 50 years after Brown versus Board of Education. And off-reservation or non-tribal unemployment for Native people is in excess of 99%. So there's still a very strong sense of apartheid in the community that's very historic. My books, actually, I write about it quite a bit in my books.
Oh, that's interesting.
You
Now,
start.
when homesteaders were given land, how much land were they given? Isn't it 320 acres or something?
Now I can't remember because I have an aunt who was married to a homesteader, a family, someone whose parents had homesteaded in the region, and they had a full section that had 640 acres.
This is a little bigger now,
But and that included lakefront property. But I don't know. It varied from region to region.
when you started this conversation, you said something about that this was one of the last areas, and I didn't have my camera on. Could you
Right.
just say that once more,
This,
please?
this was one of the last regions in the state to be homesteaded, even after the Upper Peninsula was homesteaded.
Thank you, enjoy.
I have, listen, I said I have a relative who was married into a homesteading family, and they homesteaded here in Benzie County in 1910, after they lost their property in the UP. And companies were coming to them asking if they could find 40-acre pieces of property in the Upper Peninsula that had trees big enough to make broom and shovel handles. So they then came down here because there was still virgin timber in the region, and it was, as I said, it was one of the last areas left where there was homesteading going on. And these regions were considered worthless, and
What were?
these areas were considered worthless because of the sand dunes and everything else. So it was one of the last regions where remnant populations remained in any significant numbers. But eventually they were dislocated through a variety of means, and the Allotment Act sort of reversed all the setting aside of reservations that had occurred during the treaties, and was a means of taking more real estate away from the native people. So it's really interesting, and one of the things that I do is I write about stereotypes in children's literature. That book, A Broken Flute, deals with that. It was there are 70 Native American authors who worked on this book, and it's about stereotypes in children's literature. And one of the really popular children's books that I believe is actually sold in the National Park Bookstore talks about and gives a very different history of the region and the allotment, and it's kind of heartbreaking, for Native people, because to see these things sort of reversed in the children's literature, because it promulgates this concept that it was okay, or it is still okay, and so we still have the apartheid in the community. Our churches are segregated by
Now,
color.
how long was it that the school had segregated lockers?
It still does today.
Still does
2011. Yeah.
Hey, thanks for coming.
2011, Brown versus the Board of Education was in 1954.
That is incredible.
Yeah.
Could you
I've gotta find
introduce
my son-in-law,
yourself?
bring him in here. My son-in-law and daughter collect Indian things, and they have this home that it's just beautiful, and I know he would love to be in here. He's probably out in the barn.
Where are you from?
We're from Cincinnati.
Oh my gosh, yeah, that's a long way.
Yeah.
My name is Lois Beardslee, and I'm an Ojibwe or Chippewa author and artist, and I live in Leelanau County. Here
I've gotta
at
get
Thorson
my-
Farm, and I live about 5 miles away.
I've got to get my son-in-law in here.